Well, I hope everyone is doing well. Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you're at. I hope it is going well for you. So I am really excited to speak about the crucial role of nutrition in fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, autoimmune conditions, and more. And for those of you, like if it's difficult to see the slides, I know there's a little button in the screen that you can enlarge it, and then it will help you see them. But I'll get started. So first off, a little bit about me. So I'm Meghan Rittmaster. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm a licensed dietitian in Minnesota, and I'm also a certified leap therapist. I am the owner of Foundational Journey, which is a virtual dietetic consultancy where I take that holistic and personalized approach to nutrition. I really get to the root cause of symptoms and issues. So unfortunately, with Western medicine, a lot of times we're just kind of putting a Band-Aid over these symptoms, or we're like, oh, here's a prescription for the symptom that you're experiencing, instead of diving deeper and getting to the root cause. So that's what I enjoy doing. I use a functional and integrative approach to nutrition. So I view, food as medicine because it's very healing. What you consume can either fight disease or it can feed it. I enjoy being a nutrition detective, so putting those pieces together to help my clients on their journey. And my own journey has led me to where I am today. So as a baby, I had issues that began. I had bad stomach constipation. As a kid, really bad stomach aches. I had a lot of constipation then as well, with bouts of diarrhea. I was nauseous a lot. I also had like rashes that would come out of nowhere. My knees would start swelling where I couldn't walk. My feet would swell. The Mayo Clinic diagnosed me as having a allergic reaction. I was allergic to viruses, which is so weird to think about now. But that kind of continued on. I then got depression and anxiety in middle school, through high school. I was an avid tennis player. I played varsity starting in 7th grade. So I really wore my body down, and I did not feed it properly. I was eating Velveeta cheese. I was, eating marshmallows and lots of sugar, things that were not beneficial for me. And so I was not doing my gut any favors, and symptoms continued, pain started to flare up. I would get tested for mono after every tennis season because I was just wiped out. And I eventually ended up having an eating disorder because my relationship with food was terrible. It made me feel terrible. There was a lot of stuff going on. In college, at 19, I was finally diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but my diagnosis was kind of like, well, we have the answer, but now, go home. Maybe here's a prescription for like Cymbalta or Lyrica, but there's nothing we can really do, and you're just gonna have to deal with it. And so going through all of this, I do not want people to have that experience. It wasn't until, I was starting my dietetics program, and working through that I realized how crucial nutrition was. I went gluten-free when I got my diagnosis with the fibromyalgia, and that helped significantly. But then I went dairy-free after having my kids and noticed even larger improvements. So I have really understood the healing power of food, and I want to help you on your journey as well, and understand that food can be very healing. So today I am going to go over some basic fibromyalgia overview just to kind of set the foundation. I want you to understand how gut health plays a vital role in autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and its relationship to nutrition. Understand the importance of mitochondria for energy production, how dysfunction is common in fibro, CFS, and autoimmune individuals, and the impact that nutrition has on our mitochondria. And then I'm going to highlight some common nutrient and mineral deficiencies. I'm going to go over a couple of common functional tests. That's way at the end. But I really overall want you to gain some knowledge on common food triggers and elimination diets, and how this can be a key healing factor in your journey. And then, of course, questions. I will be happy to answer them. So I hope you enjoy the nerd session that I'm about to get into. So obviously, fibromyalgia is a chronic condition characterized by widespread musculoskeletal pain, fatigue, and sleep disturbances. but you can also have other symptoms, depression, headaches, irritable bowel syndrome, dysmenorrhea or painful menstruation, difficulty concentrating, anxiety, non-cardiac chest pain, shortness of breath, hypersensitivity to various stimuli. So a lot of times our stress response is heightened as well. So that makes us even more sensitive to like noise, odors, bright light, touch, a lot of things. Urinary frequency or urgency is increased, and paresthesia. So, that burning, itching, prickling, tingling on that skin without any apparent physical cause for it. So many individuals with fibro also meet criteria for chronic fatigue syndrome and vice versa. So if you look at all fibro patients, 80% of them are likely to have chronic fatigue as well. And if you look at all chronic fatigue patients, 80% are likely to have a diagnosis of fibro too. So there is that continuum where we have that myofascial pain that's usually seen as like the mildest form on the continuum, and then fibromyalgia is that moderate, and then chronic fatigue or chronic fatigue immune dysfunction, which is just a fancier term, is the most severe. There are other medical conditions that can share, similar symptoms with fibro. So obviously chronic fatigue syndrome and fibro, very similar. Hypothyroidism, anemia, rheumatoid arthritis, Lyme disease, other rheumatic disorders like ankylosing spondylitis, multiple sclerosis, and Sjogren's, and a lot of communities that I am a part of with fibromyalgia, a lot of these diagnoses are going hand in hand with fibro as well. Cancers, dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in your gut, and I'll get into that. Leaky gut or gut permeability, which we do not want that, and I'll get into that as well. And post-viral immune suppression, and even blood sugar imbalances. I want you to take notice that all of these have something in common. So underlying systemic, like chronic inflammation, is a huge driving factor amongst all of these. So any of these, we're having a lot of inflammation going on in the body, and it's been going on for a while, and it's just this snowball effect. So I want you to keep in mind that inflammation plays a huge role. So there are many contributing factors that can lead up to a diagnosis. So it could just be, one thing that sets the slew off of all these triggers, and then, the inflammation gets going, and all of a sudden you have fibromyalgia, or you have chronic fatigue syndrome, or, have an autoimmune condition. But viral infections, that now includes COVID. And long haul COVID. A lot of long haulers are seeing chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia is popping up, brain fog continues on, it's huge. Multiple chemical sensitivity, histamine intolerance is common, mold exposure is a big one, environmental sensitivities, food sensitivities, Lyme disease and tick-borne illness, heavy metal exposure, GI infections, dysbiosis, parasites, Candida, unresolved traumas, that includes emotional traumas, chronic stress, physical traumas. Our stress response was amazing way back, when we needed it, when a lion was attacking us and we needed to survive. But now our stress response is triggered almost constantly. So you're sitting in traffic, it's triggered. You just got in an argument with a friend, it's triggered. You have a deadline, it's triggered. Like, we are living on high stress. So our bodies are getting worn down. It is no wonder we are seeing so many diagnoses popping up. Hormonal imbalances also play a role too. So this is just a nice picture of, how there are different factors that can affect our system balance. So when you have one thing, like let's say impaired detoxification or inflammation, is out of control, it's going to disrupt all these other areas as well and cause an imbalance. So these are complex illnesses that need root causes to be addressed. We don't need to be putting Band-Aids over symptoms or addressing just individual symptoms. We need to get to the root cause. It's like peeling the layers off of an onion, and we cry a lot during this process as well, just like when we are dealing with onions. So now to get into the role of gut health. So Hippocrates stated that, all disease begins in the gut, and yes, it does. Our gut microbiome is made up of 100 trillion organisms. And we don't just have a gut microbiome. We have a microbiome like in our mouth. We have it in our lungs. Our skin has a microbiome as well. So it's pretty cool. And they all talk to each other. But it's made up of bacteria, yeast, fungi, and other microbes. And they have their own little ecosystem. It's a community. So we want to keep it in balance. Our microbiome facilitates nutrient digestion, absorption. It regulates our immune system, and we are all struggling with immune dysfunction. It aids metabolism, communicates with our brain, and it aids other systems as well. So that is just what our gut does. And so when that is out of balance, that's clearly going to affect a whole bunch of different systems and a whole bunch of physiological processes that need to happen. So our health is going to be affected. So 70 to 80% of our immune system resides in our gut, which is huge. Again, if our gut is out of balance, our immune system is going to be out of balance and easily triggered and not working efficiently. Our gut microbiome is also known as the enteric nervous system, or ENS. It has its own pain receptors, nerves, and neurotransmitters that are often identical to those in your central nervous system. And it has a bidirectional communication with the brain, which is so cool. So, when you're maybe going to give a presentation or, going to talk in a meeting and you get the butterflies in your stomach, it's, that anxiety, like the worries that are coming from your brain, you feel it in your stomach. That's the connection right there. Or let's say you're thinking about, you're going to have something for dinner. Let's say maybe it's mashed potatoes. I don't know. But just that you can almost smell it. You start to salivate. Your stomach starts to grumble. So the mere thought of that food is starting the digestive process. Sorry. There's a little illness going on in my house, and so it hit me. All right, I will live. So that's just another way of saying that an altered gut bacteria will affect our brain. And then any altered, it can result in stress or anxiety. So the stress and anxiety can also alter our gut, but our altered gut microbiome can also lead to stress and anxiety and depression. So it's really cool how there's that connection. So research indicates that a majority of fibromyalgia patients have SIBO, which is called, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that is where we have bacteria that resides in our large intestine. It starts to move into our small intestine. And we don't want that. We want it to stay in the large intestine. Our bacteria, they need to stay in their places. And so we can start to see, bloating, excess gas. We can start to see overgrowth of bad bacteria or, overgrowth of yeast, a bunch of different things that can lead to, headaches, pain, what have you. Unfortunately, many fibromyalgia patients have been found to have IBS as well. And so, again, our gut health is going to be crucial when it comes to autoimmune conditions, fibro, and chronic fatigue syndrome, and more. So diet can detract from or enrich the diversity of our microbiome. So when we are looking for enrichment, we want a varied, fibrous, whole foods rich diet. So that's going to include a variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, quality protein, whole grains if you're not reactive to them, healthy fats that include omega-3 fatty acids, and I will get to why the omega-3s are so important. Fermented foods, because those are going to help provide our body with some probiotics or good bacteria, but that bacteria also feed off of that. Sufficient hydration is critical, and potential probiotics and prebiotics in addition, like as supplementation. So it's really tailored to the individual. Our gut microbiomes are like fingerprints, so it's different for everyone. So some detractors when it comes to our gut microbiome, or foods that can really hurt the gut. The typical Western diet and standard American diet, unfortunately, which includes, refined sugars, highly processed foods, hydrogenated vegetable oils, and trans fats, a low fiber intake, additives, preservatives, artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, glyphosate, and other chemicals that are sprayed on our foods, and many conventional products. There's a lot of research out there that is showing that glyphosate alters our gut microbiome, and that's not good. There's, a high intake of pro-inflammatory omega-6 fatty acids in comparison to omega-3s. So omega-6 fatty acids, they are essential. We need them. Our body needs them from food. So we don't want to eradicate them from the diet, but we get plenty of them through various oils that we use, a lot of, the vegetable oils, but grains as well. We are getting plenty of it in our standard diet. The omega-3s, especially like EPA and DHA, those come from like fatty fish, oils from the fish, or you can get them from omega-3 supplements. You can get it in a form of ALA from nuts and seeds, but unfortunately our body doesn't convert it very well to EPA and DHA. So I always recommend people to include, fatty fish in their diet or a supplement with omega-3s. But currently, we are getting an intake of omega-6 to omega-3 in a ratio of 20-to-1 up to 50-to-1. And we want to see it more at a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1. 2-to-1 is most optional and or optimal, and that was basically what our ancestors did, in like the Paleolithic days. That was more their ratio. But 3-to-1 is going to be great too. So one way of doing that is really upping our omega-3s and moderating our omega-6s, but both are essential. Other factors that can hurt our gut: alcohol, smoking, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin or Advil, antibiotics, acid blockers, other pharmaceuticals, chronic stress, C-sections, widespread use of antiseptics and sanitizers. So majority of people fall into this category of altered gut microbiomes and imbalance. So we all kind of need to work on our gut health, but it's especially critical for our population. So the foods that we are consuming are also the food for the bacteria, the yeast, the fungi in our gut microbiome. So we want to make sure that we are feeding them foods that they can thrive so that the ecosystem is optimal, functional, and thriving. If our diet is full of the detractors, then an imbalance is going to occur within the gut microbiome or ecosystem. And that's where we see that dysbiosis or imbalance of good and bad bacteria. So we start to feed the bad bacteria and lose a lot of our good bacteria. And we see symptoms occurring: autoimmune conditions, food sensitivities, pain, brain fog, poor memory, headaches or migraines, what have you. So there's a lot. I mean, also like diarrhea, constipation, the list goes on. So we don't want to see that overgrowth of the yeast or fungi or bad bacteria, because this is going to influence our immune health and the integrity of our gut lining. So when we start to have this imbalance going on in the gut, along our intestinal wall, we have these little gates. And so these gates allow foods to pass through, allow, different nutrients to pass through that need to pass through, but it keeps out unwanted like pathogens, large food particles, medications, food chemicals, things that we don't want to go through. But when our gut starts to become imbalanced, we actually start to see separation of these gates. That allows for those pathogens to get through. It can get, to different areas of our body, different tissues that we don't want to see happen, and it creates inflammation. And then we have this cascade of events that happens, and it's not pretty. So this is just a nice little, diagram to show that our gut balance, has a relationship with leaky gut and our immune system. So we want to make sure that we are efficient and optimal. And then when you have them out of balance, it's going to lead to that inflammation, and we see the slew of symptoms that occur. So now moving on to the role of mitochondria. So cells are your body's smallest and structural functional unit. They form tissues, which form organs, which form entire systems. So it's crucial that we are maintaining the performance of our cells. So organelles, these are components of cells, each with a very specific function, and our mitochondria are one type of organelle. So these are responsible for energy production of the cell, and we consider them the powerhouses, and they are part of every cell in the body except for red blood cells. They're responsible for converting fuel and processing oxygen into energy for the cell. So they have crucial roles. The fuel for our cells is delivered in the form of ATP, so that's our energy, and that is produced through a set of reactions within the mitochondria. So we have the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle, and the food that we consume and the nutrients in our foods help influence that Krebs cycle and citric acid cycle. So it's in the mitochondria that food is converted and stored into energy, or the ATP. The cells will then use this energy to move, divide, and survive. So their potential to affect overall health is huge. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our mitochondria functioning optimally, healthy, and happy. Fibro and chronic fatigue syndrome are known conditions to have impaired energy-producing mitochondria. But there are other, conditions as well, like chronic Lyme disease, adrenal fatigue, multiple chemical sensitivities, and other autoimmune conditions too. So what negatively affects our function of our mitochondria? So nutrient insufficiencies or deficiencies, environmental toxins, which we unfortunately can't get away from, certain medication, pharmaceutical drugs, infections, which include gut infections, an imbalance of your gut, chronic inflammation, illness and chronic illness, and also as we get older, we start to lose the efficiency of our mitochondria. So we really want to do our best to keep them functioning optimally because we're already losing it as we age. And if you notice, all of these, factors that can affect our mitochondria also affect our gut microbiome. So when mitochondria start to function improperly, we start to see symptoms that are involved in the organs that require the most ATP, like the brain, the cranial and peripheral nerves, skeletal muscle, heart muscle, endocrine glands, and kidneys. So we can start to see increased muscle stiffness, pain, fatigue, exercise intolerance, neurological symptoms, immune system dysregulation, and inflammation. So there are key nutrients that specifically are relevant to, the function of our mitochondria. So this includes our B vitamins, magnesium, which majority of us are magnesium deficient, unfortunately. So a lot of times for clients, I recommend a magnesium glycinate supplement or magnesium malate. Malate can help with pain for people struggling with pain, and magnesium glycinate helps calm the system so people can actually sleep better. Acetyl L-carnitine, CoQ10, lipoic acid, nicotinamide riboside or NAD, and then phosphatidyl ethylenolamine, that one is a tongue twister, or PE, and antioxidants, which we get from a lot of our plant foods. So resveratrol we find in grapes, PQQ, vitamin E, a lot of nuts and seeds, vitamin C, zinc, selenium, copper, and acetylcysteine, the list goes on. So moving on to know what affects our mitochondria, I want to now shift to what are some common nutrient deficiencies that we see in our population. So magnesium, vitamin D, which half of all fibro patients are deficient in vitamin D, so make sure that you are getting your vitamin D levels checked. Most people in the world are vitamin D deficient as well. Antioxidants in general, so carotenoids, vitamin E, vitamin A, C, selenium, glutathione, which glutathione plays a huge role in our immune system as well. So glutathione, goes in our blood, helps fight off the free radicals that damage our cells, and make sure that we're thriving. When you are sick with a viral illness, let's say, because COVID is abundant, let's say with COVID, you actually deplete your glutathione levels drastically. So we want to make sure that we are keeping our levels sufficient. CoQ10, N-acetylcysteine, and cysteine. Those are all antioxidants that are commonly deficient. Thiamine, tryptophan, arginine, and glutamine, which are all amino acids. So glutamine is also huge with gut health and gut healing. It helps with the mucus layer in our intestinal tract. So having a glutamine supplement can be beneficial for the process of healing the gut. Zinc and copper, omega-3 fatty acids, and malic acid. So when I work with clients, the first part of the healing journey involves removing the biggest offenders or triggers. And a lot of these are going to be what we can control, and that comes to, food. So the top food offenders are gluten, lectins, excitotoxins, so MSG and aspartate, dairy, corn, soy, coffee and alcohol, histamines, and nightshades are all big triggers for our population. So with elimination diets, utilizing them can really help pinpoint what foods are triggering those flares and symptoms. And once they are removed from the diet, the body and the gut can start the healing process. So that's when, our digestion and absorption can start to correct itself. Because when our gut is out of balance, we're not going to absorb our nutrients properly. We're not going to utilize them properly. So things are going to start to go wonky and go downhill, unfortunately. So when we remove these triggers, we can start to heal that digestion and absorption and have it start to correct so we can absorb our food. Many of the offending foods are triggering due to their processing, growing tactics, chemicals that are sprayed on them, remember the glyphosate, and GMOs. So, our food has changed so much over the last, 100 years. So our bodies are still trying to keep up with that, which is what is causing so many triggers as well. We're still kind of in that Paleolithic era of, how our body responds to food. So we're trying to keep up with all of modern technology and, food industries. So elimination diets is a frequent beginning diet and starting point for people. And if you want to get more specific, you can opt for a quality food sensitivity test. And that's where I'm certified in that MRT and LEAP. And I will go over that more towards the end. So there are many versions of elimination diets, but all versions eliminate the suspected foods. So one great way to hone in on figuring out, what foods are maybe causing issues for you is to journal. I know that's not very fun, but it can really give great insight. So write down all of the food, all of the drinks, how you're cooking your foods, what supplements you're taking, and write down, what is your mood? What are your physical symptoms? What's popping up? Do that over 2 weeks, because unfortunately, foods can trigger a symptom in a span of 3 days. So what you ate 3 days ago could be why you're experiencing the symptom today. So that's why you want to have, a 2 week period so that you can see if there is a pattern with a specific food that's causing a symptom for you. So during these elimination diets, foods are eliminated for at least 3 weeks. That's very, very minimum, and up to 12 weeks or longer. It depends on, if your symptoms are being resolved and how long that is taking. Then it's followed by a reintroduction and food challenge phase. So after the set period of elimination, foods are going to be brought in one at a time every 3 to 4 days, because again, when you introduce a new food, it can take up to 3 days for a symptom to actually show. So accounting for 90% of all food reactions, the top 8 allergens are milk, eggs, peanuts, nuts, wheat and gluten, soy, fish, and shellfish. And oftentimes the foods that are eaten most that patients, cannot live without are typically the most problematic ones for them. So when we eat a food over and over again, we can actually start to become sensitive to it as well. So it's good to rotate your foods. Many start out eliminating refined sugar, dairy, wheat, and gluten, and processed foods. And removing these foods potentially translates to less activation of the innate immune pathways, less inflammation, and less pain perception. So going gluten-free, this is one of the biggest ones and first, eliminations that I tell people to do. So I tell people, celiac disease testing is really crucial to see if you do have celiac. But people who even test negative for celiac do well on the gluten-free diet. So people struggling with migraines, fibromyalgia, different forms of arthritis, IBS, chronic musculoskeletal pain, and various idiopathic neuropathies. A lot of research is showing that people in these with these diagnoses, gluten-free improves their symptoms. So the proteins in gluten, which are called gliadins, these can actually break down nutrient-absorbing cells in the small intestine. That can lead to leaky gut, which then leads to more food sensitivities, food intolerances, and other GI disturbances or autoimmune conditions. And that's just kind of a brief overview of what actually happens with those proteins in the body and, causes the problem. So when it comes to a gluten-free diet, what foods are eliminated? So gluten is a family of proteins that's found in common grains, barley, rye, wheat, some oats as well, and their grain products. So the breads, cereals, crackers, pastas, etc. Barley, bulgur, and oats. So even the gluten-free oats, you want to make sure that gluten-free oats, when they're stated, they're in a certified gluten-free facility, because if they are manufactured in a facility with other gluten-containing ingredients or oats, you can have cross contact, and so you can still have gluten that shows up. Rye, seitan, triticale, and wheat, various forms of wheat like farro, kamut, spelt, couscous, and other varieties, those are all going to be eliminated. So I'm sure you're thinking, what can I have if I go gluten-free? So there's a lot of options out there. So there are gluten-free grains and flours. Again, if your body is able to tolerate grains, but you want to look for unsweetened, sprouted, and organic. So amaranth, and in parentheses, these are just typical serving sizes for, a meal when I'm talking about them. So amaranth, brown rice cakes, buckwheat, nut seed or rice crackers, but you want to make sure, that they don't contain wheat, because there are some out there that do. Millet, oats, but look for rolled and steel cut. Make sure they are certified gluten-free. Don't go for the quick oats, because those are highly refined. They're going to make your blood sugar spike, and then you're on this blood sugar roller coaster ride, which leads to more inflammation in the body and more gut imbalance. Quinoa, rice, and teff are other options as well. And arrowroot flour is great, cassava flour, sorghum, tapioca. I've even done quinoa flour sometimes. I also love almond flour and coconut flour. So then I also will oftentimes tell people dairy-free is going to be beneficial for them as well. So dairy is frequently associated with food reactions, especially for people who lack the enzyme lactase, which helps break down the lactose, which is that milk sugar found in milk and dairy products. And when you don't have that enzyme, you can have painful gas, bloating, and digestive upset. Fermented dairy products like yogurt and sour cream can be naturally lower in lactose, and certain cheeses as well, like a lot of the harder cheeses are lower in lactose, but they still contain casein, which is a milk protein that can also cause adverse reactions. So there are different types of casein in milk depending on the type of cow. So this impacts your tolerance and intestinal permeability. So some individuals seem to do better with goat or sheep milk, and that's due to the type of protein. So A2 protein is typically higher in the goat and sheep milk. A2 protein is one of the two forms of casein. A1 is the other form. But A2 comes from heritage breeds of cattle. So looking at Guernsey and Jerseys of cattle. It is also found in human breast milk and found in goat and sheep milk. A1 is commonly found on our store shelves. So by 1985, over 90% of all dairy cows were Holsteins. And unfortunately, these cows have genetic mutations that cause it to produce the A1 casein variant. So this variant makes it more difficult to digest, can bind to necessary nutrients in the body, and then lead to many unwanted health effects. Some people also do really well with raw, unpasteurized dairy that they get from a local dairy farm. But if you're struggling with those, you know, those proteins, then even raw, organic, unpasteurized dairy is going to be problematic. So when you go dairy-free, you're going to eliminate all butter, all cheese, heavy cream, half and half, ice cream, kefir, milk, sour cream, yogurt, whey powder, and evaporated milk. And it shows up in hidden forms in a lot of packaged foods as well. Good thing that it is enforced that labels have to say whether it contains a milk ingredient because it's one of the top allergens. So some non-dairy alternatives, you want to look for unsweetened and organic. And there is kefir that you can use that, you know, look for the coconut, plain coconut. And again, here is serving sizes. Unfortunately, it is high in histamine and fermented foods. So if you have a histamine intolerance, or maybe you have issues with FODMAP foods, you would want to stay clear of kefir. There are non-dairy milks, so almond, coconut, flaxseed, hazelnut, hemp, and rice. But you want to be mindful because a lot of these different milks have, you know, binders in them. They have gums. They have additives. There are some brands out there like Malk and Elmhurst 1925 and Three Trees that very, like, they use the basics where it's like almonds and water. So they don't have, you know, like the carrageenan or the guar gum, any of those like fillers or additives. Yogurt, they're, you know, looking for the cultured coconut yogurt is going to be the best. But again, that's going to be higher histamine and fermented. So if people have issues with that, stay clear. Kite Hill, I know, is one that people love. Silk, so delicious, dairy-free. They have a lot of additives though, and a lot of fillers and binders and gums. And that's just not good for our GI system. Coco June is a brand that I've used. I'm not a spokesperson for Coco June or anything, but it's one that it has a probiotic in there and has less ingredients. And so that's one that I wanted to give a recommendation. So when you're looking at a complete elimination diet, you're going to be looking at this list of foods that we're going to be eliminating for up to 12 weeks. Alcohol, beef, chocolate, coffee, soft drinks, energy drinks, tea, so caffeine in general, corn, dairy products, eggs, gluten-containing grains, peanuts, pork, processed meats, shellfish, soy and soy products, and sugar. What is allowed, you can have those dairy alternatives. You know, we really emphasize fish, so halibut, mackerel, salmon, herring, sardines. Get the wild caught instead of fresh farmed. The herring and the sardines, though, are high in histamine, so if you have a histamine problem, you'll want to stay clear of those. Fruits, but only those that are specifically listed. So you want to look for organic and unsweetened, organic as much as you can. I tell people to look at the Dirty Dozen list or the Clean 15 list on the Environmental Working Group page, and they will let you know, what is the highest pesticides and what has the lowest pesticides. So the Clean 15 are the ones that you don't have to get organic, or I would recommend you don't have to get organic. So apples and applesauce, apricots, bananas, blackberries, blueberries, dried fruits are okay, but make sure they don't have added sulfites in them, but they are high in histamine. Figs, grapes, grapefruit, diluted juices, kiwi, kumquats, lemon, and lime. All melon are great. Mango, nectarines, oranges. Obviously, the list goes on. Raspberries, but raspberries are also high in histamine as well. So there are foods that you can eat. Game meats, gluten-free whole grains, the healthy fats and oils like extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil. Although avocado, another one, is high in histamine. So if you have a histamine issue, that would likely be, avoided as well. Coconut milk is going to bring in healthy fats. Coconut oil, grass-fed ghee, that is considered a dairy product, but it is an ultra clarified butter. So those casein proteins from the milk are taken out. So a lot of people do well with ghee. Grapeseed oil, rice bran or sesame oil, and then various salad dressing oils as well, like walnut, sunflower. I know there's another one, but my brain is not working. But you don't want to cook those oils. So that's why they're considered the salad dressing oils. You want to use them as a finishing oil. Legumes, all legumes are great except for soy and peanuts. Obviously, if you're non-sensitive to the legumes, if you're sensitive to legumes, you'll want to omit those as well. Nuts, except peanuts, are allowed, but some are high in histamine, like cashews, sunflower seeds, and walnuts. Poultry is allowed, seeds, and various vegetables. There are some vegetables that are in the nightshade family, like potatoes, tomatoes, bell peppers, looking at like salsa, eggplant. And if you have arthritis or, you have a lot of joint pain, sometimes you'll want to eliminate those nightshade vegetables too. So when you're looking at a complete elimination diet, you really want to make sure that you're getting adequate protein, since, protein helps perform multiple functions, including balancing our blood sugars. It helps with eliminating toxins. So you want to make sure that you're including high quality protein in every meal or snack. So that means the lean, pasture-raised, grass-fed, organic, and non-genetically modified sources. You want to look for low mercury fish, so the halibut, herring, mackerel, salmon, and sardines, and make sure it's wild caught. Any wild game is great: buffalo, elk, lamb, venison, poultry. And then, for the vegetarian side of things, spirulina is great, legumes, lentils, and peas, and select protein powders like hemp, pea, and rice are going to be great sources of protein. So getting in adequate legumes, so that's going to be the beans and the lentils. So they have that quality protein, but they're also a complex carb. So they're full of fiber, which helps feed our gut bacteria. Getting in a variety of nuts and seeds and having 1 to 2 servings a day. Making sure that they're raw and unsalted, which is typically preferred. Even better if you can get sprouted nuts, because that's just going to help the absorption better as well. Flax seeds and hemp seeds can be ground and stirred into smoothies or sprinkled on salads, and nut butters can count towards this as well. You can use them as condiments, spread them on fruit, and drizzle them over veggies. So fats and oils, make sure that you're getting in enough fats and oils, especially the omega-3s. So, those fatty fish, or getting them from supplements. You want to choose minimally refined, cold-pressed, organic, non-GMO fats and liquid oils. And also make sure that you're getting in a lot of non-starchy and starchy vegetables. So you want to aim for 9 servings of colorful, phytonutrient-rich plant foods a day, but have them mostly be vegetables. And if you're not getting near that, start slow and work your way up. Slowly add it in each day, maybe add a cup or another serving each day. Increase your water intake for any fiber increase that you're seeing, because when you increase fiber and you don't increase your water, you're going to have some struggles. So eat plenty of colorful plants. Get in a rainbow of colors. Not the Skittles variety though, but plants. Getting in cruciferous vegetables is also great each day. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, bok choy, and arugula. If you're chopping the broccoli, cauliflower, or cabbage, and you're going to use it to cook with, make sure that you chop it an hour ahead of time and let it sit, because it contains sulforaphane, which is a bioactive nutrient that is really good for our immune system, good for our detox system. But if you chop and then cook right away, you actually will eliminate that sulforaphane. And if you chop and let the vegetables sit there for an hour, you allow that sulforaphane to accumulate in the vegetables. And then when you go to cook it, some of it will die off, but you'll still have some around when you're eating. So tips to, have a successful elimination diet. Plan for success. So plan things out, be prepared, be ready, read food labels. There's a lot of hidden food ingredients. Don't go hungry. That can, when you all of a sudden are like, I'm starving, you have a tendency to reach for things that are off the list. Eat regularly, choose organic when you can, choose cold pressed oils, eliminate caffeine before even beginning so that you don't experience those, caffeine withdrawals as you're doing the elimination diet. Get enough water in and get plenty of rest when possible. So a step up from the elimination diet. So we had that complete elimination diet. Now we're going to go to the next level. So this is the autoimmune protocol. So it's based off of the Paleolithic diet or paleo diet. It involves the 3 phases of elimination. So it removes dietary additives, emulsifiers, Western dietary patterns, and specific foods. And then you have a maintenance phase where you maintain that elimination until your symptoms improve. And then you slowly reintroduce foods again to identify, what is causing these triggers, or what is triggering these symptoms. So the AIP helps rebalance the gut bacteria, regulate the immune response, promote gut healing, and provide beneficial nutrients. Research indicates it can improve symptoms and quality of life in individuals with autoimmune conditions, including IBS and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Same for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue patients as well, because a lot of these diagnoses go hand in hand. IBS is common in fibro patients and chronic fatigue and a lot of autoimmune conditions. So it can be really helpful for people. So this is just kind of a glimpse of what you would eliminate on this diet. So alcohol, grains, all grains, coffee, dairy, eggs, food additives, industrial seed oils, that includes canola, safflower, and sunflower. You would remove all legumes. So you could have the legumes and different grains in the complete elimination diet, but you can't in the autoimmune protocol. You remove all of the nightshade vegetables. So that would be your eggplant, your peppers, your tomatoes, your potatoes, and then you want to remove those NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs too. Nuts and seeds are also going to be removed in this, and then refined and processed sugars. But you can enjoy, bone broth, fermented foods, probiotics, foods that are high in healthy fats, which include avocados and seafood, a lot of fruits, non-processed meats, organ meats. So think of kidney and liver. Poultry is allowed, various tubers. So you might not be able to have potatoes because those are in the nightshade family, but you can have sweet potato, and you can have pumpkin, you can have parsnips, Jerusalem artichoke, and have all of the vegetables except for those that are in the elimination category. Wild game meats are also allowed in this as well. So when you will eliminate the legumes, you eliminate the grains, you're really eliminating lectins. So what are lectins? They are found everywhere in nature. You have a high amount in beans, peas, lentils, and peanuts. A lot of the grains as well: buckwheat, oats, quinoa, amaranth, millet, sorghum. They all contain lectins too, but plants produce them for protection, and they're involved in germination. So they can wreak havoc if we don't have the enzymes to properly digest them. So they bind to carbohydrate molecules in all tissues and then cause them to clump together. They bind to our GI mucosa, weaken it, and then allow for that gut permeability to happen. They degranulate our mast cells, which is part of our immune system, and that leads to IgE production, which leads to allergic reactions, and that can also mimic food allergies too. So our GI system and nervous system are especially sensitive to lectins, and people struggling with IBS, arthritis, any inflammatory condition, autoimmune condition, can really have susceptibility to a lectin issue. Those with arthritis who react to the nightshade family probably have a lectin sensitivity as well. You can destroy some lectins in foods by soaking and cooking in a pressure cooker or taking a digestive enzyme. Typically, it's like the beans that, if you soak them and then put them in a pressure cooker, you can remove those lectins and better tolerate them. And there are some grains that you can do that with too. So it seems like on the AP or AIP that you cannot eat any food, but that's not right. So I just wanted to put some recipes, that there are recipes out there. You can enjoy food. It's just figuring out how to cook and, create these foods. So there is a balsamic chicken vegetable sheet pan dinner that I wanted to show, and you can still have dessert too. So this came from a food blog where they had a banana, they had coconut butter and raw carob powder. So instead of using raw cacao or chocolate, dark chocolate, because that's not allowed on the AIP, they used carob powder, which tastes just like chocolate, and it's even sweeter. So there are other potential elimination diets that can show benefit too. So the vegan diet, there are research studies that have shown where you have improved pain, morning stiffness, sleep quality, and more. People following a low FODMAP diet. So research has shown that improved pain, muscle tension, asthenia, depression, sleep quality, memory, headaches, abdominal pain, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, and more. Those all improved. So FODMAPs are fermentable oligosaccharides, monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polyols. So these are short chain carbohydrates that are found in various foods that are rapidly fermented by our gut bacteria. So foods that our gut bacteria really love to eat, unfortunately, like garlic and onions fall under that category. Apples, like soy, wheat products would fall under all these FODMAPs, even some avocado. But you know, it creates all these various symptoms that are unwanted. So a lot of people do really well on the low FODMAP diet, and you slowly introduce foods back in again to help figure out, okay, which FODMAP foods are the ones that are triggering my problems, because not all of them will. And so there's just like the different breakdowns of the FODMAP. Eliminating nightshades and high oxalate foods can help reduce pain linked to arthritis, which is linked to arthritis mostly, like the nightshades. A lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, going nightshade free has shown to be really helpful. Oxalates bind with calcium and form crystals that can lodge in your kidneys and tissues and more areas. Any excess oxalate can lead to oxidative damage and deplete glutathione, which we're already deficient in. Nightshades contain alkaloids, so solanine, tomatine, nicotine, capsaicin, and they inhibit a neurotransmitter enzyme called cholinesterase. And so that's where all these symptoms start to arise. Eliminating MSG and aspartame. So these act as excitatory neurotransmitters, and we call them excitotoxins, which have the potential to damage neurons and cause, symptoms in susceptible individuals. So people who have IBS or even like migraines can do really well with eliminating MSG and aspartame. How you cook your food also plays a huge role. So make sure that you are cooking your food in ways that minimize formation of what we call advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. So these are typically formed during the cooking or food processing, where there's an interaction with a reducing sugar and a protein or amine containing lipids. So it's just this interaction that occurs and these products are formed. So patients with fibromyalgia have been found to have significantly higher concentrations of AGEs in both their blood serum and muscle biopsy samples. And so when you're cooking, you really want to be cooking low and slow and in the presence of water rather than oil. You want to emphasize boiling, poaching, and stewing over frying, broiling, and roasting. And AGEs have also been shown with Alzheimer's, they're abundant with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. They accelerate aging in the body. And so we really want to slow these down. So if you're like, whoa, that was way too much, I don't even know where to begin, you can always start with a food sensitivity test. So the one that I am certified in, that's called mediator release testing, and LEAP, which is lifestyle, eating, and performance test. It has a lot of research to back it up that has shown that it can help with autoimmune conditions, arthritis, fibro, chronic musculoskeletal pain, chronic fatigue, IBS, sleep disturbances, weight management, and more. The list continues to grow. It measures hypersensitivity to 170 different foods and food chemicals. And then with your, oh my gosh, my brain glitched. With your response to these different foods, a meal plan is then tailored. So it'll show with your lowest reactive foods, and then we slowly work our way up to start to incorporate more of the reactive foods. And I'll show you what it looks like, what a test looks like. But many people notice great improvements in 2 weeks, and for others it can take a little bit longer. I've had people notice a difference in 3 days, which is fantastic. So here is, what a test result looks like when it comes back. So this is an example of one of my clients. I know it's kind of hard to see, but as you see, there's like green little bars, and they can get bigger themselves. So we start with the lower green bars, eliminate those upper foods, and we slowly then start to introduce new foods. And we can, towards the end, start to introduce more of those yellows too during the process. But typically we stay away from those reds because those are significant. And later down the line, maybe like 6 months, maybe a year, you can try those red foods again. If your gut has healed enough, you can be completely fine. So people will get this little card with their moderate foods that they're reactive to, and then their most severe foods that they're reactive to. And it's handy when you're grocery shopping or when you're eating out. And this is just what like the program looks like. There's 5 different phases where we slowly add in new foods. And this looks very limited. We're increasing the amount of foods in phase 1, so it's not just limited to, you know, that list that you would see there. We're allowing more food. So we're kind of mixing phase 1 and 2 together so that people have more variety. And then towards the end, you have a phase 6 where you have a 3-day diet rotation, because again, eating the same food every day can lead to food sensitivity. So then this is just another area that can help, or another way that can help pinpoint a starting place of where to begin. And that's like functional nutrition labs. So I've done organic acid labs with people, stool testing with people, micronutrient status testing, vitamin D, all these different things, heavy metal testing, mycotoxins, all that. And it can help set the stage and lead us on the right path versus sometimes it is a guessing game. But this can really help at least set the stage for that. All right, so I know that that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions?
It was great information. Thank you so much, Megan. I know Brandy and I have popped in here to help you with the Q&A for the presentations, because I was trying to keep track of everything too with alkaline foods coming up. People have questions about soy. Where should we even be? I guess this was a question too on like beginning, because I think I hear a lot when some people eliminate, right? They take out everything and can't eat food, but maybe a slower approach would be beneficial.
Yeah, a slow approach can definitely be beneficial. Starting with gluten-free and dairy-free are 2 of the big ones. Then, you know, maybe amping it up to soy-free and corn-free. Those are a lot of the big hitters for people as well. But also, I tell people to start journaling. Start taking note of what you are eating, how are you feeling, what's your mood like, what symptoms are you experiencing, and do that over a couple weeks, because that can help, you know, with seeing if there's any trend with a certain food that might be causing these problems.
I have questions. Oh, Melissa, you're muted still. She's like, yeah, just take it over, Brandy, because I have so many questions. Look, I have like a list of people of questions, and I have in red across the top. Melissa, we need another interview with Megan. I have that in red across the top because I seriously have so many questions. I won't ask all of them right now, Megan, because I know you and I have a consultation in a couple of weeks. And by the way, get a free consultation off of Megan's website. I put the website up there so you can go and grab it. So yeah, Melissa told me about you and how she connected. And when Melissa gets excited about somebody, I get excited because I know that there's substance. And so I went to your website and I got excited because so many of the issues that you've struggled with is I'm struggling with. So at the beginning, it was like hearing my own story come from you from childhood all the way till today. All those symptoms that you listed for fibro, I have all of those. When you started talking about gut, I mean, I passed an actual worm that was like this long a couple of summers ago. I told Melissa, I was like, what? It was crazy. And like the candida, the scratching and the itching and all of that. So I'm more excited about that consultation with you now than I was a little while ago, because everything you've listed, I'm experiencing. And I've got to the point where I just don't eat anymore. I weighed myself at the doctor this morning. I've dropped another 10 pounds in the last couple of weeks. And it's not good because I'm just not eating, because everything that I eat just has a reaction. So one of my main questions was, you said no coffee, right? I can't give up my coffee, Meghan. It fuels me. So is there an alternative for those of us that just love coffee, but our guts don't love it?
So I can't necessarily say that there is an alternative that is equal to coffee, because nothing can take that flavor of coffee, like no matter what you try. But there are different ones out there. There's a lot of like herbal mushroom coffee blends, coffee blends. Like there's mud water that people have used, or there's Dose, which I know has a little bit of caffeine in there. Four Sigma is another one. They use adaptogenic blends for people to help provide the sustaining energy for the body. But you have to stay consistent with it. And what the downfall with caffeine is, there's a lot of mold in our coffee and our coffee beans. So when you're having that coffee, you're getting that mold exposure, unfortunately. And so that's what the biggest issue is like, there's a lot of mold that's coming in these coffee beans.
Wow. I had no idea about that at all. Like my husband and I have been talking about for the last week, like him and I have increased our coffee, and we're like, we really need to cut it back because we both have gut issues. And so I was like, he said to me this morning, we're not going to cut coffee. I said, we have to find a way. So that's going to be one of the first things that you and I talk about. And what about reading food labels? Is there anything on your website that kind of helps? Because you did mention about, this hidden food ingredients and what to do, what not to, and it's just very overwhelming. So do you have anything on your website that kind of guides us to that?
I don't, but that's a good thing to like now put out on my website. And it all depends on what people are needing to eliminate too. But, those common ones, I can definitely help with those hidden ones with milk and gluten, soy. I mean, what's also unfortunate is when you see something as like natural flavor or natural spices or herbs, things can get hidden in there. So I will definitely be coming up with a sheet that I can provide for people.
That would be great. I know someone else was saying in the comments that they want access to this slide deck that you just showed, because there was so much great information. When I was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia, it'd been 6 years, and my doctor actually lives with fibromyalgia, so she was able to recognize it. And one of the first things she did before she even offered medication was, you need to cut out these things. And she cut out like processed food, corn, gluten, dairy. And then I was like, seriously, I said, what is there for me to eat then? It seems like if you cut that out, I don't know about anything else, but I cut it out, and I cut it out for 6 weeks. And then I remember going down to Chick-fil-A at the time. They had the peppermint milkshake. I had it, and within 15 minutes, I was like breaking out in a sweat. My stomach was hurting. Pain was escalated for days. And I was like, wow, my body responds to food, and it was not responding well to medication. So I've taken that natural approach, and food is huge for me. It's, when I was growing up, we celebrated in every kind of way with food. If you were happy, if you were sad, if you were mad, it was always food. So if you try to take it away, for me, it was just really hard to separate that out. So listening to you and visiting your website is just a lot of encouragement for me personally to say, there's hope out there. And, you may not be able to resolve everything for me because I'm like this huge complicated mess, but I do have hope that you're able to get me started, and slowly through baby steps, we could get something worked out, because fibro is so reactive to our foods. I don't think a lot of people understand how much, you explained so much in your slides right there of just how much they're correlated. So thank you. I know you've helped me and so many others with just that. So hopefully people will go to your website and learn more about, everything that you have to say, because you have a lot to offer. So thank you so much for doing this. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I could talk to you forever. I can understand why Melissa was so excited, and we definitely need to get you on another interview because there's other things that I want to talk about.
I love to nerd out, and I'm happy that, you know, you were able to get stuff out of this. Like, you know, that's my biggest concern as that perfectionist, like A personality. I'm like, is this gonna like give people any help and like guidance? So thank you for for that, because it makes me happy, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to help people heal. So
well, you're definitely doing that. You're definitely doing that.
Well, and thank you. And again, you keep saying the magic word. So I think we should have planned ahead that if she says the magic word, there's someone that gets a prize in the audience or a giveaway. And anybody that's watching that doesn't know the magic word, you need to hang out at Support Fibro more often. But before you leave this stage, I wanted to bring on our next presenter, if she's okay with it, to also she has a question backstage. So Katie, give me a wave if you're okay with coming on stage and asking your question, and then we'll get into her presentation too. So I see her back there. So let's welcome Katie to the stage. Katie had a question that got posted backstage and not in the regular comments, because we're trying to, if you're backstage, you can't post in the real comment section. So Katie, feel free to ask your question.
So I have been getting out into nature a lot, and I'm doing foraging. And I just watched this wonderful documentary called Fantastic Fungi. And they talk about just how nutritious mushrooms are. And so I've been finding edible mushrooms, and specifically turkey tail is not edible. It's more of a medicinal. And I've been picking a lot, and I've dried them and ground them, and then using it in tea. And I was just wondering if you were at all familiar with any of this.
Yeah. Mushrooms are, I mean, like this summer I was gung-ho on cooking up lion's mane mushrooms.
Oh, lion's mane, yeah.
those fuzzy hairy mushrooms.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't necessarily forage myself. Like, I want to learn foraging, but there are so many benefits, and I'll use different like tinctures, different adaptogenic, you know, mushrooms and different supplements that help my immune system. And you are definitely doing the right thing. Like, they are full of B vitamins. They are full of so many antioxidants, bioactives that get down to a genetic level, a cellular level, you know, to turn on certain genes in our body, turn off certain genes. So
that's cool.
It's awesome.
It's exciting too, and it's been fun learning and that kind of thing. So it's nice hearing from someone like yourself, not just all these people who are crazy about mushrooms and foraging, talking about, you know, that it's good. So
I might be a little crazy, but
my husband's like, what are you doing with that turkey, you know, tail that we're collecting? So anyway.
You're nerding out, Katie.
I know. I'm getting so nerdy about this kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And Maudie knows the magic word, so I'm going to see her in Philadelphia. She gets to meet the nerd in person. So, well, thank you, ladies, so much. And Meghan, yes, we are going to have to schedule more interviews with you. I know I got Brandy excited, so I'm glad the connection and everybody here appreciates the information you have and your background. So thank you. Thank you for jumping in and joining us today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And I'm happy that, you know, I could provide some information. So
there's a lot of good information.
It was.